Okay.
So I think I'm going to start. And I'm going to start by welcoming everybody to this first experimental, I don't know what you call these days, Facebook Live broadcast, which we're doing, Lizzie and I are doing. And welcome to everyone who's chosen to join us or to watch later. This is something of an experiment for us and a really exciting one. We are wanting to bring the work that we do and bring what feels important to us to a wider world. And somebody said to me the other day, we have never had a better opportunity to bring what we care about to the world than we do now. Nobody in the history of the world has been able to do this. In previous generations, if you wanted to get something out into the world, you'd have to write a book or you'd have to get famous in some way. And nowadays we can bring things to one another very widely and very easily. So we've made a commitment to do that. And this project is called Turning Towards Life. So Lizzie, maybe I'll say something about this and you can say whatever you want to say about it too.
Yeah.
It strikes me more and more that the world is in no end of turmoil, and many of us are in no end of turmoil as well. And in any moment we have a choice, which is, do we turn towards life or do we turn away from it? And turning towards life can be hard. It can be beautiful and wonderful and exciting and deep and loving and kind and courageous, of course, but it can also be frightening. It can have us have to step outside what's comfortable for us to know ourselves in new ways. And it's no accident that many traditions keep on reminding us of the importance of choosing life, of turning into life, and they'd only have to do that if we need some help with it. So this project here is really to help us and to help anyone who comes across this with this project. So that's what I'm going to say about this for now.
And I want to, so I'm aware that there may be people watching this video who are in contact with different parts of our worlds. And I wanted to say something about me and Justin and how we are related to one another as well. So Justin and I are friends and we also work together as well. And increasingly that our work fuels our friendship and our friendship fuels our work. And it's a very beautiful kind of marriage of different kinds of relationship, I think. And so we feel like this is us in some way coming out of hiding. Justin wrote one of his beautiful pieces of writing recently on that topic exactly. And it feels to me like there's a riskiness to this. You know, we don't really know like what our plan is, or, you know, we've got a vague outline of how we're going to do this and we have the source and we're going to post it on Fridays in order for us to be able to reflect on it a little bit before the Sunday. Every Sunday at 9 AM UK time we'll be doing this. This is from each of our bedrooms / offices. I'm in my bedroom at the moment. I'm staying with my parents because I currently don't have a home to go to because it's being painted and decorated and things. And Justin, I know, is in his office, in his house. We both live in London, but quite far away from one another. So we wanted to make this possible. So we're also doing an experiment with technology as well, which is brand new for us. We just kind of did a subscription on Zoom, and this is how we are trying this out. So it feels like a big offering that we're making of ourselves, which has risk in it. And, you know, we're kind of finding a way of bringing our voice more clearly and more widely to the world, which feels really meaningful and also is a bit scary. I feel a bit apprehensive and a bit, you know, is the thing going to work and is it going to record and is anybody even watching now? Like, I don't really know the answer to that. And also what we're going to say, because obviously we can't, you know, this will be unscripted and in the moment and a conversation between Justin and I. So we're really, really happy if anybody's watching, and as you engage with us, we really would love you to participate with us too, as I said, I think in our welcome video. So this topic of turning towards life is a very central one in each of our inner journeys and our work in the world as well. I find myself asking, well, what if we're turning towards life, what is life anyway? You know, I immediately get thrown into these big questions of like, what is life? Who am I? Who is anybody else? So in that way, I know that the topic of this group is really a big invitation for me, because I begin asking myself big questions even from the title of the thing. So I'm really grateful, Justin, that we're together in this and doing this together.
It seems to me, Lizzie, it's wonderful hearing what you have to say, and I'm enjoying this experiment, us not being together and talking with one another on Zoom and seeing who else might be listening to us.
Yeah.
This topic of turning towards life is, I know, has been at the center of the work that we do, the coaching that we do, and what we teach also when we teach people to be coaches. But for me, it's becoming a more and more urgent question. I can feel in lots of ways how quickly time passes, and how easy it is to zone out. I think one of the reasons I've got interested in this topic is not because I have an answer to the question, but because I have many questions and struggles with the question. How do I keep myself, find a way? There's two different ways I have of talking about this morning. One is, how do I keep myself attuned to life so that I can respond? Because there's so much that needs responding to. Or another way I'm thinking about it is, how do I let life reach me? Which is another whole way of orienting to it. And that I find that when life reaches me, I can, for a start, I can take so much more responsibility. I can take responsibility for me, and I can take responsibility for the people immediately around me. And I have more resourcefulness to take care of the world as well, which is not some soft, let's make me feel good kind of project, but much more, how do I participate? And whatever gifts I might have, you might have, other people have, how do we get to bring them? Because I don't know, somehow it seems to me that our surrounding culture seems incredibly negative about human beings, about what we can do and about what we can bring and how we can help one another. And it's really easy to get swept up in that as well. So I'm super interested in us doing this project, you and I together, and bringing it to people in what we'll find out, and in the struggles we'll encounter, and in how talking together about really what it takes, and all of the pitfalls and interruptions in this project of bringing ourselves, that this will be helpful. It may only be helpful to us, but I suspect it might be helpful to other people as well as we go.
And I found, Justin, just, you know, I reread your blog post on Friday, and I've been thinking of it, and I just spent the weekend with my sister's children and my mum, and I found myself not being able to avoid having read that you're writing again and again in each of these precious little moments of, you know, I woke up this morning and my niece was just like this, straight in my face, like looking at me. And I just feel like it's helped me to kind of intensify my attention to the moment that will never be again. And maybe I should just begin reading, because I feel like that's, you know, we're kind of heading in that direction. I think that's the gift of this already for me. As you say, like, this is for us and for whoever is wanting to participate with us, but I can already feel the gift of it emerging as we're speaking now, and as I've been reflecting in the last day or so of what you're writing, the topic you wrote about. So anyway, I'm going to read for us. So this is entitled Numbered, and it's written by Justin. So sometimes I remember that my days are numbered. My days for working are numbered. My days for seeing a cloudless sky are numbered. My days are numbered for sitting beneath tall trees, and my days are numbered for learning. My days for holding the ones I love are numbered, as are my days of kisses. My days of anguish, fear, and longing, they too are numbered. And my days of walking the crests of high hills. My days of deep conversation with friends and colleagues are numbered, and the days on which I can make a dent in the world. My days for inventing, creating, demolishing, undoing, subverting, contributing. My days for mending and tearing apart. My days of confusion. My days of spreadsheets, keyboards, pens, and paper clips. My days for traveling by train, bus, boat, plane. My days for reading, music, turning my face towards the stars and washing the dishes. My days of getting to know myself. My days for understanding what life is. My days for loving, my days for knowing, all of these too. I don't think I can remember this all the time. I'm too forgetful for that, too easily absorbed in the work of the day. But when I do remember, life shines with new depth and wonder, and I find it much more straightforward to do what I'm here to do.
Thank you for reading that, Lizzie. It's lovely to hear it read.
It's lovely
So
to read it.
I should say that it's not our plan to pick things that we've written every time, but it seems like such a wonderful opportunity to explore some of the ideas that we've already been bringing. And I think the first thing I want to say about this is I wrote this in the midst of realizing that someone who I love and care about, who was far away, was in the last couple of weeks of her life. And I was walking in central London between two pieces of work that I was doing, and I came across Finsbury Square. And in Finsbury Square at the moment, Finsbury Circus, they're digging Crossrail. So there's big digging machines and tunneling going on, but there's also extraordinary tall, mature oak trees, I think they are. And I was in the middle of a day where I was feeling pretty scared and worried about things in my own life and my own capacity to respond to them, and caught up in all of that. And when I remembered that someone I loved, who'd been really courageous about facing her own death, was in the midst of the last couple of weeks of her life, and seeing the trees, so it was the combination of the both. I saw that these trees that I could walk past, that she would never have a chance beyond a couple of weeks to encounter this again. And here I was, right in the middle of trees and digging machines and all of these things. And it shook me very powerfully out of my self-absorption. And I realized two things really struck me that gave rise to this. And I sat and I wrote it pretty much right away there in the square. One was, however afraid I am, however caught up in my own, so when I get afraid I freeze, however, or very often, however sort of frozen I am, that this will pass, this will be gone soon anyway, one way or the other. This frozenness is going to be over, and everything beautiful will be over too. Mm. And it was one of those for me, very profound moments of being shocked, both beautifully and terrifyingly, both at the same time, into sort of, now is the moment, if there's any moment for me to take any kind of responsibility for the way, as you just said in introducing this, for the way in which I pay attention to life, as well as how I respond to life. I'm really struck by what you said, that so much of this is to do with how our capacity to pay attention. It's now, and in fact, it's not only now, it's now and now. It's every moment, which is increasingly my way of making sense of what I think becomes a bit of a tired cliche, which is living in the moment, as if there was no past and no future, as if that was the important thing. And I interpret it in a completely different way, which is, now is the moment to pay attention, and now is the moment to take responsibility. There is no other time in which that can happen. It can't happen in the past. That's done, and it can only be anticipated in the future. So I was enormously grateful for this gift that came, and that's what's striking me about it immediately.
It's also like, as you're talking, it's occurring to me that to do the thing that you're saying, like to be paying attention, to be that vulnerable, that we're in the flow of life, where really we can't control anything, and life itself is a force. No wonder we get up to all these things to stop us from doing that very thing. You know, I've been feeling into the fact that, you know, we might complain a lot and find holes in everything and get irritated about things that in the end don't really matter. And, you know, I got curious about how maybe that's a really, really efficient protection mechanism. You know, maybe we protect ourselves, maybe we hide for very good reason, because we're really afraid of this thing called the moment and our work in the world and what life really is. And so all the ways that we find dissatisfaction with things, and we might have a way of finding more judgment than we do acceptance, because we're really trying to protect ourselves from so much. So that's what arises for me when I think of this proposition, you know, of our days are numbered. It's really, really true, and it's a really big and scary invitation to being real and to paying attention to. Actually, my sister was telling me something yesterday. She was saying that I can't remember the exact line, but it's like, you know, the flowers are telling us the truth and we're missing the whole thing because we're not even looking at the flowers. Like there's a level of life or a frequency that we're ignoring by staying asleep. And this waking up thing, waking up to our inevitable loss of everything, it involves listening in a different way, paying attention in a very, very different way than our being on our mobile phones all the time, complaining about things, feeling permanently frightened, reading newspapers to keep ourselves jolted into the fear of all of the stuff that's going on. And of course, like staying aware of that is so important. But I notice my tendency to kind of check the news every 2 minutes, to somehow maybe even send myself to sleep with the worry and the fear. And this invitation, Justin, that you make with your writing is that there's more going on than just the fear. There's more going on here than my neurosis. There's more going on here than my self-absorption, as you put it. There's way more. And what does it really take for us to turn towards more than our patterns and our habits?
I recognize that pattern that you talk about so well, which is which the news can be such a feed for, which is somehow apparently turning towards the world, because of course that's where I'm looking if I call up the news headlines. But at the same time, what I'm wanting to do simultaneously is, one is either reassure myself that everything's okay and I don't need to worry. So that's the quiet wish that I have. The news will say, the headline on the news will say, everything's all right. You can go back to bed and then it'll be fine. And then there's another part of me that is fueled by the, oh my goodness, all the terrible things that are happening. I better shut down. And like you say, beautifully said, neither of them are very truthful responses to the world. But there's a kind of truth that's brought to us actually in very ordinary things, in the flowers that we see and in the people around us, that here we are. It is both absolutely extraordinary and unbelievable that any of this should exist, and we better take care of it.
Yeah.
And it's frightening too, because we're so vulnerable. Anything could happen at any time, and that's the sum of the human condition, and always has been. And so I get to wondering what it takes, and that's partly writing this piece that you read, what it takes for us to live in a state of, to cultivate rightful wonder and awe at life, and not seeing it all as ordinary and mundane all the time. In fact, seeing the wonder and awe in the mundane, and at the same time taking fierce responsibility for it.
Yeah.
Knowing that our moments to take responsibility might end at any time. All of it might end at any time. So let's do what we can whenever we can to ease the burden of other people and to deepen our encounter with what's here. And I often think in a little sort of crazy thought experiment that if I knew that in the next moment my life was to end, I would appreciate ordinary things so much more fiercely and deeply. I'd appreciate, the hours sitting on a crowded tube train, or I'd appreciate washing the dishes or doing my tax return, or I'd appreciate the moments that somebody had helped me, or I'd even appreciate feeling afraid. I'd be grateful for all of those things in the face of their impending loss. So can I suppose this is my question, not keep going to sleep to that and live in a way that has that be here and present for me?
Yeah.
And I think we have to do that if we're going to take care of things. That's the other thing that's really striking me when I look at the news, Lizzie, is how much of the way we collectively are responding to the world seems to be, if I push these other people away, if I push this thing away, if I pretend it's not happening, if I say things urgently enough and what's the word, with enough energy, then the world will be just as I want it, which is another way of hiding from exactly this, the radical unknowability and responsibility that we have all the time.
And actually, Justin, I'm feeling, as we're talking, like one thing that really helps me is in this moment being in relationship with you. And it's of course not just about you, but like the genuine relationships I have in my life and that I seek out for sharing and support. I don't think that without that any of this is really possible. So, I find myself talking about the news, and the fact that you're hearing me say the things that I do in my neurosis helps me to feel like there's hope, and that I'm not just an endless spiral of habits and patterns that ultimately isolate me. But somehow relationship feels like a break in the chain of habitual repetition, that I get to be like in this moment with you in some kind of revealing conversation that brings whatever my stuff is into the light of whatever the connection is between you and I and the world as well. Like this is a program, a video that's like going into the world. There'll be other people in witness to us, and I think there's something really important about that we are beings that are built for being together and unfolding together and revealing ourselves to one another in service of our own unfolding. And I think turning towards life kind of has to include that, because you are life. To me, in this moment, you are life. And in order for me to turn towards you, this kind of disclosure and sharing and being with one another feels like oxygen and hopefulness and a righting of the twistedness that I can get into as I begin to kind of spiral into whatever habitual news checking, being irritated and impatient I can be. Is like there's a break in it because we could be together and talk about it and be honest about it.
I'm very well touched by what you're saying. It's a reminder to me that none of us are alone. And when we start to know ourselves that way as not alone, so much more is possible. But maybe this is a topic we'll get into another time. And we said we would do this for half an hour this morning, and we're starting to get close to that. So I'm aware of that. But we don't really have in our culture at this time in history, most of us, practices, communities, narratives, stories that remind us that we're all in this together and that have us turn towards one another. That's partly what I'm taking from what you're saying, is that turning towards life is also necessarily turning towards one another. They can't be separate from one another. But we don't have in our culture much that binds us. And maybe at other times in history, in this part of the world that we live, and certainly in other parts of the world, there have been powerful ways of bringing people together so that we could keep on encountering our non-separation from one another, and awakening also our wonder and our responsibility. And we've lost most of that. And I've just been reading an extraordinary, wonderful book that I may bring part of to another time that we do this, in which the author is saying exactly this, that we've taken up imagining that we're completely on our own, and we've taken up projects. For example, he says we've put making a living being the central concern of human beings. Not that it's not important, of course it's super important, but that it's the only concern, that the highest value to which we can aspire in our culture is to make a living, not to be deeply woven into community, not to know ourselves as life and responsible for life, not having stories that connect us with our grief and our longing and our hope. All of those most of those have been taken from us. And what have we got left instead? We've got TV shows, some of which are very good, but we have so little that will help us with this project that you're talking about. And in fact, so that also stirs in me a wish that this project that we're beginning can be part of that too. It can be a small contribution to the practices of helping people turn towards one another.
Yeah.
Who knows what wonderful technological and other ways we might have of this conversation, which is starting between the two of us.
Yeah.
Have a way of including more and more people as we go.
Yeah. Oh, well, it's 9:27 on my clock, which means we've had a conversation, and I feel very invited into my day and warmed and glad, and yeah, I'm really, as you say, Justin, happy that we might make a contribution into giving a structure for community, however small. Just once a week we'll show up and be in conversation in the way that actually we would normally be if we were on a train or, you know, doing something together. There would inevitably be some kind of something like this that we would be talking about. So it kind of just feels like making public the things that go on in our conversation, so it doesn't feel difficult or yeah, it just feels normal to me. So I'm really grateful that we are like that this is possible.
Yeah, me too.
It's really cool.
I thought I would say something. I have not looked to check who's been with us during this half an hour.
Oh, I might be able to see.
And we can do this, we'll get better at this as we go. I wanted to say a couple of things to anyone who's here with us and who might watch this at some other point, whilst Lizzie is checking who's been alongside us. So the first thing is it's our plan to do this every week. The second thing is that we will post, as Lizzie said at the start, some resource, a poem, an article, a reading, a chapter from a book, who knows what we'll find, on a Friday, and that's what we'll be talking about on the Sunday, so that if you're joining us, you'll have had a chance to read, particularly if it's something that's a little bit longer, you'll have had a chance to read it before you come on. And then the second thing to say is we would so welcome you joining us and speaking with us as we go. And one of the ways that we know you can do that is to write comments on Facebook underneath the video as it's going, or if you're coming to it later, and we'll do our best to respond. We might even, as Lizzie is doing now, I think, find a way that we can respond sometimes as we're going. We don't quite know how to do that yet.
Justin, there's loads of comments.
Fantastic.
I know, I can't believe it. I need to, I think you and I should just read them after this, because we're going to go over time if we carry on, but I think a lot of people are watching, which is really wonderful.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everyone for being brave enough and generous enough and organized enough to set aside some time on a Sunday morning, if you're in our time zone, or whatever time of day it is, wherever you are, to join us. And I am so grateful, Lizzie, to you and to all of you that we're getting to do this. It seems like an amazing gift that we can get up to this in the world.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm going to say. I'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody. See you next week. Bye, Justin. See you next week. Bye.